What's up friends, today we've got a pretty simple video. In this video we're going to be installing the aux pack onto the Atlas Pro. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so there's a couple reasons why I wanted to do this on video, and one of those is to show you the inside of the Atlas Pro. I've not taken this apart yet. And I'm interested to see how they put it together, what the fit and finish looks like, and how the battery will connect to both the front and the rear ESCs in case of four-wheel drive. Now, I'm also curious to see if we would be able to use the front output of the aux pack to power lights in a custom setup that I might be making a little bit in the near future. And another thing, I want to see how the battery voltage comes out of the aux pack and interacts with the ESC. And basically, is there any way to use the aux pack for something like a DIY board? It is a little bit overpriced for the cells that are in it, but it's very well built and decently waterproof. So it could be a good option for people that are looking to purchase a battery rather than having anything to do with building one. So let's go ahead and get started. And to get started, it's pretty simple. I've got the new lid right over here, and now we're going to bring that over in a second. But first we have to take out the 18 Torx screws on the top here, and I believe they're T20, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that screwdriver or that bit for my drill, and we'll go ahead and take all of those out. All right, so that's all the screws removed. Now, let's see if we can pop this out without the special tool. It's a little bit tight in there. And just try a screwdriver and lightly pry. There we go. If you're gonna use a screwdriver, be careful because you want to damage the gasket underneath. And there we go. So this is a nice solid piece of carbon in there. And it looks like the gasket has done quite well preventing the battery from getting any dust on it. There's a little bit of dust in here, a little bit of sand specifically. Not exactly sure if that's just because I opened it and it fell in from the screw holes. I imagine that's the case because this gasket looks pretty nice. It's quite wide, in fact. So I'm gonna grab some B-roll in here and see if we can find anything interesting. All right, so here in the back compartment, we have the rear ESC, which appears to be screwed in internally from the enclosure, but this carbon fiber area is all locked out. So the ESC actually looks like it would come out from the outside, which is kind of interesting. It does make the inside battery compartment a lot more water resistant. I was curious what this metal piece is, so after a little bit of finagling, the receiver antenna is actually connected to this. You can see it right there. This is just kind of stuck in some adhesive in here, so there we go. Yeah, you can see the antenna right there. Quite interesting. This is right behind the carbon fiber lid, and sometimes in engineering we make a fiberglass window in carbon fiber lids so that it's radio transparent, but this one doesn't have one, so I guess their signal strength is just strong enough through the carbon anyway. Just something I thought I would point out. Up in the front here we have two connectors that go into the same set of wires. It's just a split. One of these is going to be for the aux pack, and the other one would be for a theoretical front ESC. which is not installed on my build because it's 2-wheel drive, but you still see those 4 screws there, which makes me think that these attach to the heatsink on the underside, and then the ESC would be attached in that heatsink, and presumably you would feed the wires through this slot underneath here, which I may use for some lights because we've got this convenient connector here. I just need to find exactly what this connector is. These have these nice little water resistant connector covers on there, but pretty neat. Good to see. The battery is in here, and it seems like you can just lift it up. I can't do this one-handed, but I'm gonna see if I can lift it up and see if there's anything interesting underneath it. So I was able to pull up the battery out of its tray, and it seems there's actually a bit of a conformed shape here, which is interesting to see. In the rear here, you have the charge port connected by a XT30. It appears to be legitimate. A XT30U with the MS branding on it. Then you've got the rear ESC connected. Hopefully this doesn't break anything, but go ahead and unplug that. And the battery is now free. So it feels very solid. I'm assuming inside here we've got a bunch of FR4, or maybe this is plastic, hard to say. In here we've got the connector that plugs into the aux pack in a minute. It's got those extra 2 wires in there. Curious to see what voltages are on those. Then you've got your connector here, which does appear to have a water resistant gasket on it. Let me refocus. This appears to have a water resistant gasket on it, which is cool. Part of that connector, and that's the main discharge. So it'll be interesting to see how this all connects up, since they've got individual discharge and aux pack connectors. So not sure if there's really anything interesting to show here. Can look down. It's just a bunch of carbon. There are some weird inconsistencies, but I think it's just in the glue layup. Not really anything to worry about. Feels very strong for sure, as one might expect. And then this outer area probably has some carbon fiber honeycomb set up in there. So that's pretty much all for the internals here. You can see the ESC over here. Not really much to look at, but it does look like it is attached to the heatsink permanently, possibly. I might take that off later, but I'm not gonna mess with that right now. And yeah, let's put it back and we will go ahead and connect the new lid. I just put the battery back into the enclosure, and one thing I'll say is this I do not really like very much. They're really pushing the max bend radius of this cable here, and it appears to me that this 16 gauge, maybe 14 gauge cable and an XT30 that you are able to put 20 amps through. So that's kind of a lot of current. Obviously I charged it once and it didn't melt yet, but it's a little bit uncomfortable to me. So when we do our charge test with the 20 amp charger, we will measure the temperature at this connector and see what it gets up to. I really don't like this. I wish that these cables were a little bit longer so they had a little bit more space to sit. All right, we've got our new lid here, but before we put that on, I'm gonna poke around for some voltages. I hate to unplug and replug this charge port so many times, but gotta know. I'm pretty sure this will be active voltage, the full 50.4. 49.0, okay, so it's not fully charged right this second. You guys can see that, right? Let's move this a little bit. So, full voltage on the charge port, no problem there. I assume we're going to see full voltage here as well. 49.0, yep. There are no wires connected to the extra pins on this connector, so nothing to measure there. So we got this other connector here, which goes to the aux pack, I think. Yeah, that's right. So in here we've got 2 extra pins wired. And I'm not sure if these multimeter probes can reach. I do not think that they can, which is unfortunate, but we should be able to measure that elsewhere, maybe? Let's see. Can these fit inside there? No. Maybe I will stick a piece of wire in there and we'll measure it that way. Now, I shouldn't need to say this, but I'm going to. Do not try this. There's no point in you trying this. You're not going to gain anything useful, and I know what I'm doing, so don't try this at home. All right, so we're going to measure this to ground and to positive and see what the voltages are for each of those. To ground on this one we have 0 volts. Sorry, that was to positive. We have 0 volts. To ground we have 0.025 volts. It's very possible that there's nothing going on with these until you actually have the battery plugged in. They could just be data communication wires between the BMS in the lower battery and the BMS in the aux pack. All right, to positive on this one, 0.19 volts and 0.040, 0.030 on the other one. Yeah, so nothing really to speak of. They must just be data communication wires. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and connect up the aux pack. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our lid here. You can see there's an arrow on it that notates the front of your board. You can also tell because the connector that you're supposed to connect to is right next to it. You can see that the front one, maybe you can't, the front one is black, and the front connector up here is black as well. So I'm going to go review the video to make sure this is plugged in correctly, but I believe that yellow goes to yellow here, and then black up here probably does not get connected. So I'll be right back. All right, so I reviewed the video, and this is very, very interesting. You do connect both of these. And the reason I say this is very interesting because both of these look like they should be discharge. Hard to say exactly, but the black one at the front is a shared discharge with the ESC wires. Let me move this over a little bit. The black at the front is a shared discharge with the ESC wires up here. Well, this one back here looks like it should be discharged too, but according to the video, you connect both. So I'm going to measure the voltage at the front here just to confirm my suspicions that this is indeed a discharge path. I mean, it has to be. Yeah, it is. And that one is also full discharge voltage. So, very interesting. I am curious what Exway is doing here, if they're able to discharge between this pack and the aux pack, or vice versa. I'm going to explain exactly how charging and discharging works in a minute here, via the description that I was given by my contact, because I was curious how this worked. So it'll be interesting to have some data on these when actually charging. So I'll try and do that later. I don't know if I'll have time, but we'll see. So we're going to go ahead and connect up the wires now, since I've gathered all the info I can. So on the rear, I'm going to connect the yellow to the yellow. I think we can reinstall this for now. So we're going to connect yellow to yellow here. It's not very convenient to do. I'm kind of concerned about the bend radius on these, how this is going to fit in here, but we'll see. Also, I should mention that you are provided with some positioning pegs in this bag here that you can stick in these holes to put the keep the gasket in place, but mine seems to be holding in place just fine. And then we're going to connect the black connector at the front here. There we go. Plenty of space up here for the black connector. Not as much space at the back here for this yellow one. I'm concerned this is just going to get jammed in here and then stood upon with, I mean, a significant amount of pressure. So, let's see. How can we make this work? There's not really much I can do. Besides, maybe I can jam the extra cables in there. It's all very tight. I think that'll have to work like that. Not very comfy inside with that though. Does not give the warm and fuzzies. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to show you exactly how I install this, but you just have to trust me that I am a being responsible builder here. Okay, the bend radius isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. There's just enough room for the cables in there. Actually, the front is being more annoying now, so let's see. I just realized part of the reason I was struggling with this front connector is because I didn't put on the piece that they provided. There's this handy piece of fiberglass that is meant to keep the cables and such from touching the enclosure lid. And it actually has 3M adhesive on the back of it, which I guess I'll stick it on there. I might have to uninstall this later, so hopefully this doesn't rip anything up. I'll leave this piece off so I can uninstall it if necessary. There we go. Now you can kind of see in there, everything is folded up nicely. And now we can put the screws on like I originally planned. Gotta flip the other discharge thingy around. There we go. All right. And I'll get this back in position. I suppose this is where those alignment pegs would come in handy, so maybe I'll stick a couple in here. Looks like they actually give you an entire new set of screws with this lid as well, which is interesting, but they all have Loctite pre-applied, so kind of makes sense. Peg, peg, no, that doesn't really do anything. Yeah. Since I will be taking this off again later, I'm just gonna put in the original screws, but you should put in these screws with the blue Loctite pre-applied, or reapply blue Loctite to these screws to keep your lid from vibrating out of place. So we're going to go ahead and screw these all together. Looks like I've got a washer here that is just jammed in the gasket for some reason. Ugh. This little weird assembly quirk there. It looks like they're supposed to be under the gasket. This one was misaligned. So we'll realign that there. Now I'm going to reinstall all these screws, and anyone who's worked on cars knows that you should install things in a star pattern. Right now I'm just going to do these all finger tight, and then we'll finish up with the drill on a low torque setting to tighten them all down. Next step is dealing with the pack itself. So here we have our thick waterproof gasket, and here we have our connector. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our chunky cable here, and the flat side goes into the connector on the deck. Pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in until it seats fully. Pretty easy to tell when it's bottomed out. Now you have this. Do not touch those leads because they are currently live. Now I could probe out those pins in there, but I don't really need to because I already looked at them inside the board and nothing was there. So now we've got our pack itself. This is pretty easy to align. The interface on the deck will allow some degree of rotation, so obviously you don't want to install it crooked. So trying to align it as best you can, both centered and side to side, and then open up the flap on the aux pack and you can plug it in. And there you go. Stick your upper rubber gasket into its holding place, and now it is connected. You need to now attach the strap. So let's go ahead and do that. Should be fairly self-explanatory. Strap goes around the base, and go down through the sides, over, up through the slots on the other side. And we're going to set this to the neutral position by pulling back the lever. And now, normally I would pull through on a ratchet strap like this until it's tight and start going. So we're doing just that. Now you have this flap here. So I guess you can just stick it under, or what you can do is release this by pulling all the way open, and you can leave a little bit looser and hope that some of the strap gets sucked up in there. Since it is a small strap. And you don't want to get this too tight, because if you get it too tight, then you could damage the plastic cover. But you want to get it tight enough that you could pick up the board by it if you wanted to. So I think I'm going to probably pull through it just a tiny bit more. And then feels pretty secure to me. And I'll just stick this underneath and kind of leave it there. So there you go, the aux pack is now installed. And now I'm going to talk about the charging. So right now we can see that the readout on the aux pack is 48.4 volts and the battery indicator is flashing. Now if you recall, the battery on the inside of the board was at 49 volts. This is a little bit lower. So what happens when you press the button? It shows 87.5, 48.4. I don't know if there's any way to decode what this means, but to me, this means that the aux pack is charging off of the lower battery, trying to equalize their voltages, because allegedly the aux pack and the board pack can share both discharge current and charge current. So leave that up to you guys to think about. I will try to ask my contact and see if I can get information before I put this video out on how that works. But now let's talk about charging. All right, so let's talk about the aux pack charging and connection predicament. Any of the DIY builders who just watched me connect the 48.4 volt battery to the 49 volt battery will probably like, how are you just doing that? Well, thing is, when you have a battery in parallel, you have a lot to think about when it comes to connecting it to another battery in parallel. Normally, when batteries are placed in series, the voltage will flow straight through them. But when you place batteries in parallel, you're effectively connecting them to be one battery with positive to positive and negative to negative. Since you're doing that, when you connect them together, the voltages must equalize to sort themselves out to become the same level. And what happens when you have, for example, a battery that is 4.2 volts and a battery that is 3.5 volts, the 4.2 volt battery will try to dump as much current as possible into the 3.5 volt battery to bring the 3.5 volt battery up to a happy medium, which would probably be 4 volts or something like that. It'll discharge into the lower charge one. Now, when you're talking about a whole pack, something of that kind of discharge is absolutely catastrophic. If you were to connect, for example, a 49 volt battery into a 35 volt battery, it would be a bad time. You'd probably end up with a bunch of melted wires, possibly a fire on your hands, especially if you kept them connected together for very long. I might be making this dramatic, but I don't think I'm too far off. Anyways, the Exway engineers or Ace Labs engineers, whatever, had a lot to think about when they made this battery, because let's be frank, most users are not very well versed when it comes to electronics, so they wouldn't know that plugging in a fully charged aux pack into a dead board could cause an issue. So what have they done to solve this? Well, the fancy BMS circuitry in both the aux pack and the board itself do a lot of work to help make this work out. So I have the description from my contact at Exway that I was able to obtain for how the board treats voltage when you apply different voltages across the board and the aux pack, as well as what happens when you charge. So if the aux pack voltage is higher or the board voltage is higher and you start to ride the board, it will automatically use whichever voltage is higher. So for example, if you plug in an aux pack that is at 80% battery into a board that is at 100% battery, it will discharge the board down to meet the same voltage as the aux pack, and then once the board reaches that voltage, they will discharge the rest of the way together. Now, if the voltage of the aux pack is higher than the board or the aux pack will discharge down until the board voltage, which will of course take much longer, but it will discharge down to the board voltage and then they will discharge together. And basically, all of the circuitry in here is doing this fancy work, but what this lets you do is it makes it so you can plug any voltage battery into each other and there will not be a spark, there will not be a boom, and there will not be any problems. As far as I've been told, if anyone experiences problems, please put them in the description or in the comments or whatever and let me know so we can relay that back to Exway and get that figured out. But as far as I've been told, there should be no problems connecting different voltage batteries together here. And keep in mind, this is only for this exact setup. If you're to plug in some other battery into the Atlas Pro, you have to make sure that your parallel voltage is exactly the same before you do that. So probably just don't do that. Charging. So charging is interesting because say for example you have low charge on the board, high charge on the aux pack, and you plug in the charge cable into the board. Well, the board will actually charge up until it reaches the voltage of the aux pack, and then I think they will charge up from there. I haven't fully tested all of this yet. This is kind of working off of a mostly well-translated message from the Exway engineers. So when you're charging, I think the best bet is to just plug straight into the aux pack because first of all, you know, those small cables in this board itself are not really what I'm comfortable plugging 20 amps into. Now, of course, this is if you have a 1000-watt charger. If you don't have a 1000-watt charger, this thing will take absolutely hours to charge, especially if you're only running at 200 watts. I don't remember how many watt hours this is. I think it's like 1000 or something, so it's gonna take a long time. But I think that covers almost all of the situations that you might encounter. I would always recommend plugging into the aux pack to charge together. If you want to charge them separately, feel free to do so. I did notice, it's been a little while since I recorded the last clips, and I know this part is going on for a long time, but it's important stuff. The board and the aux pack have actually equalized while they were sitting here, so I'm not sure if that's some sort of active thing or what, but I would recommend making sure they're both fully charged when you plug them in and only plugging them at different voltages if you absolutely need to. Because I think the aux pack charged up, the board charged up the aux pack while they were sitting here, and they've now equalized and come out to a voltage of 48.5. If you recall, the board was at 49 before, and this one was a little lower than that. So yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say about the charging. Hopefully you found that info useful. I don't think this is listed anywhere, so yeah, hopefully that was useful to you guys. That brings us to the end of this video on the aux pack installation. I've got lots more testing to do with the aux pack and the Pro, so let me know what you want me to test. I'm going to do a range test. I'm probably gonna end up riding all day with this thing because 10p of battery, I mean, come on. Even if they're Lishen cells, that's a lot of range. So let me know what you want me to do down in the comments below. And if you found this useful, hit that like button because people always forget unless you tell them. I don't know, it's a thing. And subscribe to see what I do with the aux pack and other videos in the future. So thanks for watching, stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.